Cool. Thanks very much for sharing all your insights. There was a couple of themes that came out, particularly from a leadership perspective. Talent came up a number of times, and also kind of, that alignment, not only at exec level, but the pressures that come with sales, but also aligning marketing into that from an operational perspective. One of the things I'm keen to start on, particularly this time of year, one of the things I've found running these events, it's always hard to get some people to come along because there's always the pressure of being tied to the desk. And if, as a leader, how do you kind of manage the pressure that is getting put on you, as well as the pressure you're putting on your team to perform? That's the first question.
Well, I think the first thing is to say, you're hiring really smart people. You're really kind of hiring entrepreneurial people as well, right? And what you don't want to do is micromanage them to a desk. You don't want to tell them where to be, when to be. What for me, it's about look at, here's the mission that I'm setting you. Here's your annual target. It's your franchise. I'm going to empower you with a set of tools that are going to help you get way past that number, because that's what you want, that you want to do the 200% year, but you're going to have to use your time wisely. And one of the things I encourage people to do, I actually kind of wrote out this little map of, here's how you should structure your week. In our business, we do mandatory pipeline generation Mondays. We bring everyone into the office on a Monday. We say, you don't really have a choice in the matter, but come and just get it out of the way, because it's a part of selling. And so if you leave that task until either the end of quarter and you're feeling that pressure of, damn, I haven't booked any meetings, you're not going to make time for things like this. You're not going to go to the gym. You're not going to spend time with your family because you've let it all pile up on yourself. And so as leaders, I feel like we have to give people freedom, but then also give people the empowerment to say, hey, here's a good way to structure your time in order to maximize the return on time and your ROI there.
Yeah, I agree with everything Luke said. We do mandatory calling Wednesdays, get breakfast in. No one likes to do it, but by the time you've realized you haven't done it, it's too late. But try and balance that. We're all adults, so we have health and wellness Thursday where you go to the gym or 2 to 3 hours and go and do some yoga. And it's not if then that, it's more trust-based, that I trust that they're doing the mandatory calling, that I don't need to know where they are on a Thursday. We do the usual quarterly business plans, live and die by your number in Salesforce, but I think there's, in terms of what I do when the pressure's coming down to the team, I see my role, I call it air cover. I'm there to provide air cover. So I trust the team. If we've got that trusting relationship and I can see the hard work, I'll absorb the pressure and try and pick the right moment in someone's, how they're feeling that week, that month, how pressured they are. And when they need to feel some of that stress, I'll let some of it slip through. And if I think they need air cover, they'll get air cover. So I think the leadership responsibility is that buffer.
I'm rubbish at it. I'm horrible at time management. James knows this very well. But I do, with my team, it's easier to cross things off others' list than your own list, right? So with my team, I go through their list for them and I cross it down to make sure that they have enough time to get done what needs to be done. And as the manager, I can tell them, forget it, throw that part in the trash. Work on this. So I'm good at that, but unfortunately I'm rubbish at doing it for myself, and I work very late nights.
Yeah, thanks. So one thing that totally changed everything for me when I joined Up Dynamics, and some of you might know of Jeremy Duggan. So I worked directly for him for those couple of years while we were setting things up. He taught me about the leading indicators, right? Because the lagging indicators that most of us live and die by is the forecast, but you can't do anything about that in the quarter, because it was already determined 6 months before that based on what you did or didn't do. And so actually, when you run a business based on leading indicators, which for us is the number of new business meetings that you do, the number of proof of values that you do, the amount of activity you spend in opportunities, that exactly allows us to with years and years of data, forecast out a rep performance 6 months from now. And so the pressure that leaders feel that comes all the way down, because just the pressure is at the top and then that goes down to the next level, goes down, is because you're chasing the forecast and because you feel out of control, because you feel like you need to close those deals to hit the number. But if you hit the leading indicators every single quarter, the forecast gets taken care of.
Brilliant. Cool. Oh, you're keen. Okay, everyone's keen for the questions. So let's go hit the room straight away.
Hi, this is Lucas from GPDQ. The question that I have, so I will be growing the team soon, and how do you deal with coaching your teams? I mean, I know it's kind of relevant to what you've just kind of said with the challenges, but how do you deal with coaching individually? I know that you've got big teams, small teams, but that would be just interesting to hear.
So that's a very good question. And it's quite pertinent because I've just had a course in coaching last week. So I think there's a key difference that I realise is one of the areas that I need to work on. My mantra, I think when I first started and looked to grow a team, I was very heavy in micromanagement because I wanted them up all at the same level that I felt I was, looking at the same indicators, the same level of trust. So I went very heavy on micromanagement for the first 6 months. I now only go heavy on micromanagement until they're out of ramp and they've gone through the playbook, and I've given them the best format that I can, and now it's for them to go and adapt. But what I identified in my one-to-ones was that I was very much doing management and not coaching. So there's a very key difference in that definition. I think management, micromanagement, leadership is about directing and giving them the answers or telling them what to do. And what I'm starting to learn is that coaching is the total opposite. So I've got a coach now, and for me it's more like counselling. So they just keep asking why, exactly what I said as tip one. Why do you feel that? What do you think the best course of action is? Where rather than giving them an answer, it should be about leading them to find that answer themselves. So actually I'm not yet qualified to talk about coaching. But I think the key point for me is there is a key difference between leading and then actually coaching in the truest sense of the word.
Start with why.
Yes.
Who's around you in your organization? Is it just you building a team by yourself? Because all the coaching doesn't have to come from you, right? Like his breakthrough with sales was, I don't always have to have the right answer. So if you've got a good culture around you, a lot of that's going to help you coach, right? The culture puts the barriers around what ideally you don't want to coach on. So if that's right, and then you're just kind of fine-tuning along the way, and then putting them in front of the right people is really your coaching job. It doesn't always have to come from you. Shouldn't come from you. But what's that organization?
You mentioned the one-to-ones as well. How important do you think that is, and how often do you want that?
Yeah, of course, right? Yeah, I mean, you have to have the one-on-ones. You have to have them. But I mean, and you have to communicate. You have to collaborate. You have to do all this. I guess my point is though is that like just look around you in your organization. It's the village raises the children together. Find the talent. Find the people you want to put that person in front of. Learn from, and develop kind of from different areas across your organization, and not just feel like you own the burden, right?
So I'll echo all of that. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, especially with the kind of Simon Sinek, the millennial thing as well. People learn in different ways. One of the things that I learned about coaching was that if you have high standards, which I'm sure everyone in this room does, the first thing is to understand that when you hire somebody, they're not you, right? And they're not going to be at the expectations that you have of yourself, right? And the first thing you've got to do is outline the expectations. And Jeremy actually used to do this thing with me talking about the man on the moon. When we decided to put a man on the moon, we didn't say, hey, let's go build a rocket and just fire it at the moon. One step at a time. So if you got a new rep in, all I focus on for the first 3 months is pipeline generation to my standard. Because if you can get them to pipeline generate to the right standard, that is the foundation that they'll need for their entire sales career, right? Because everyone will come in at a different standard.
I don't know what you think, but definitely the top 10%. You'll get more out of that top 10% incremental than you will ever get out of the bottom 10%. You've got to focus on the A players, not the B players.
First moment of conflict. My view was going to be different. I feel like if the A players are consistently over 100%, they're going to manage themselves to that standard, and the juice that you can squeeze out of them is less than finding a B or C player who's on 20% and then coaching them round to 75, 100%. So my goal is the middle lower performance. I do think there's a D or E that speaks for itself. So equally, you leave the top 2 quartiles, and that middle half is where you can squeeze the most out of people through coaching and upskilling them.
The top. So 2 for 2 for America, apparently. So don't be a B seller in America.
Let's see if we can even this out then. Damn. I'm going to go controversial third option. I'm probably going to make it complex in my usual way. So I think the first thing I would do is make sure I understand how you're measuring people. Because if you're measuring people based on revenue, you're doing it wrong. Because revenue, as I said before, is a byproduct of everything they did before. And if you haven't taught them the skills how to do that, then that's your fault, not theirs. And so you've got to go back to a set of skill areas that you can teach that are going to help people get where they need to get to. Because step 1, never hire a B player. You've screwed up. Do not pass go. Do not collect £200, right? Like, go back. Because the second you introduce a B player into your organization, you've screwed it up. Because then everyone will expect the standards to fall, and A players will either leave or they'll drop their standards. And so make sure you don't screw that up. The second thing is, when you've got the talent in, it's your job to develop it. And everyone who is a $0 contributor, I've had people go from doing nothing for a whole year to being the top rep in the world, taking home £2 million paychecks, within a quarter, because we always backed them, and we always focused on the skills, the leading indicators that were going to get them to the result, not on the result itself.
Can we have a lady in the room that wants to ask a question? Hello.
Funny. That's funny, James. Thanks. Okay, I didn't actually have a question. Think of one. Yeah, sorry, Jamie here from FE International. Wow. Yeah, thanks, James. I didn't have a question, but now everyone knows who I am, so awful. Do you have a question? Off you go. Here we go.
FE International. She brought me here, so I work with Jamie. Nothing to do with sales. Well, we do sales all the time. We just sell other people's businesses. Here's my 3-second pitch. Question is, we do have opportunities as well, and I think question to you probably more than anybody else. What were those automating tools to bring the bottom 90%? Sorry, I was very interested. I was going to ask afterwards. Sorry, guys.
not a search person for them. The other, the one that's the AI platform that qualifies your leads is called Deep Blue. Yep.
They were both my questions, so thank you.
Next, who's got a question? Go on. Right, we're going to have 2 more questions.
So Luke, sorry.
In the mic, sorry.
I've got quite a big voice.
True.
Yeah, right. So Luke, specifically you talked about resilience. Right. You spoke about resilience. How specifically do you measure it and codify it?
So how do I measure it? I look always at real people's life. You know, an interview with App Dynamics is a kind of pretty personal experience, because I don't really care about hiring salespeople. I want to hire great people, and we'll do the rest. And so with resilience, I look for times when people have put themselves in difficult situations, when I'll give you a story about somebody that's just been an exceptional performer for me, set his heart and soul on a career in the military, didn't go to university, but smart guy, right? And he applied for the Navy Special Forces Underwater Bomb Disposal Squad. So you go, crazy, like that, okay, bit special, right? And spent his whole career just working towards a single goal, made it through 900 people, down selected the bottom 2, got in, did the training program, dived for 6 months, but then on a training dive, got the bends, almost died, and was in one of those crazy decompression chamber things for months, had to rebuild his entire life, but then could have taken home honourable discharge from the Navy, and sick pay and a pension and everything, but didn't. Got straight back on the horse, went into recruitment, where a lot of us will have started out, got into sales, built his career up, and never ever let it beat him. And I've got so many stories of people that have had those kind of experiences in their life. And for me, people that have been through that, they can take a no on a deal, right, or a no on a cold call, right? It's people, like, unfortunately, and I'm not saying these people aren't also good, but that haven't had any of those kind of experiences in their life, that they're a bit more unpredictable, when it comes to how they perform.
Okay, last question.
Cheers. John, you mentioned something about creating like an agile team, putting in with like Google Atlassian. What is that? If you could elaborate on it.
So in my layman's way, obviously Agile has been a software development method, highly successful over, I think, the last 2 years, maybe more, that allows you to form small core groups to quickly develop, build MVPs, test, and if successful, roll that out. What we're looking to do, particularly in Eventbrite, and we've got Agile coaches now part of the business, is we sit across a huge spectrum of the market: SSO, self-service, a large part of where our revenues come, sales, marketing, product. There's so many challenges that we could look to fix. Sometimes, based on the number of engineers you get at any other company, you might get caught in the, as a sales guy would say about roadmap, it's coming out in Q5 syndrome. But what we're looking to do with the Agile teams is get small pockets of people from any role in the company, so we can stretch and use their intellect and get them really, so an SDR could go and join the SSO marketing team on how do we get more organic clients saving up, all about conversion rates and web pages and things like that. But if they're passionate about it and they want to invest time in doing it, we feel that we can create a number of small groups to work on these bite-sized challenges, breaking things down, and quickly move and test, and if it's successful, move into version 2, 3, and maybe implement it. So it's been, anyone that's worked or spent time with anyone from Google, they've got the 20% time. You can dedicate 20% of your time in your work week to projects of your interest. This is an extension of that to try and help us, for Eventbrite, that will help us look to develop product or roll out internal efficiencies much quicker. And I think for the employees, it gives them something much more tangible to buy into the company, because then they're flexing their creative muscles and actually building something rather than chasing an MQL or a sales number and staying in their pigeonholed box. From an employee point of view, you can get a lot more out of people and stretch them if you give them the chance to do that. There's a bit of a waffle, is it kind of?
Thank you. Right, can we thank all the speakers? Thank you very much.